Alright, hello everybody, and welcome back to another Fury of Dracula video and a strategy guide video for you this week. I've got quite a lot of these in the works. I'm really excited to bring you these sort of more educational videos just to take a break from all the gameplay. This is not the video I was planning to release this week, but I've got a few projects sort of ongoing, but they're not finalized yet. So instead of releasing something that is potentially half finished, or you'd have to wait for part two, then I thought it'd be a good idea to quickly throw this together. A nice maybe it's a bit more simplistic topic on basically how to find Dracula and how to find Dracula's trail. But because I've quickly thrown this together this morning, it's maybe not got the same production value as it normally would like, and also I haven't scripted it, so we're doing this off the cuff. So we'll see how we get on here. So if there's any mistakes or anything I'll misspeak during the video, then I apologize in advance. I'll leave stuff below in the comments if there's something I want to correct later on. But yeah, we're going to talk about how to find Dracula and Dracula's Trail because it's especially when you maybe more of the physical board game. At least it'd be the case for me, without seeing the digital edition and talking to other members of the community. When you get the box and you find out it's a asymmetric hidden movement and deduction game, um, as the hunters, you're really anxious to find Dracula, right? And the game doesn't really explain to you how you find Dracula, which is understandable, right? You got to try and discover some things for yourself. But that can be a little bit of a source of anxiety for hunter players, and you see it with new hunter players all the time. They start moving very quickly and trying to find Dracula and things. But the game has a lot of different ways for you to find Dracula, and I think it's also important then, not just in the beginning of the game, but as the game progresses, for you to understand what sort of resources are at your disposal to find Dracula, and then when at certain moments in the game they could be more crucial. So we're going to go through this, and I thought it'd be quite good, even though I've talked about a lot of these things in other videos, having a separate video just on this topic I thought would be a good idea. Okay, so that's the plan for today's video. So without further ado, we shall start. Oh, if it actually wants to change the slide for me. There we go. We're going to start off with this meme. This is something I posted in the Discord community. I think about 2 years ago now at this point, and it was just meant more as a joke. There's obviously there's a particular thing in this meme that's a little bit of a joke, right? One of the one of the event cards that probably shouldn't be there, but anyway, I thought it was a funny meme. But it does really sort of highlight a particular sort of aspect of the game, which is there's a lot of different ways that the game can help you find Dracula. Right, these event cards are really crucial. Um, as I say, events are your friend, right? Out of the 75 event cards in the deck, 18 of them can help you find Dracula. That's not 18 unique cards. There's some which are duplicates, but still, it doesn't matter, right? Out of the 75 total cards in the event deck, which is a mixture of Hunter and Dracula cards, by the way, 18 of them can help you find Dracula. So there's about 25% of the whole deck. So that's quite a lot. There's a lot of resources in that deck which are loaded into helping you find Dracula. So it's not a case of the hunters having to sort of bumble around and just, hope that they stumble into Dracula's trail, right? There are definitely resources to help you. So just in case there's anybody watching this which is from the physical, they've only played the physical version of the game. In the digital edition of the game, we have, at least in the community that I'm part of, there is a meta that is developed, and the meta is that the hunters stay still for the majority of the first week. I won't say exactly the number of days because it can change depending on the game and circumstances and stuff. But for most of the first week of the game, the hunters actually stay still and supply. So there's very little movement going on, and the hunters are digging through this deck partly to try to find these 18 event cards that can help them find Dracula, but also they're just supplying to find other stuff, right? Even if you find Dracula or find his trail, you've still got the encounter cards to deal with, so that's where items come in, and then you're going to need other things. You need what I call the express movement cards, things like Charted Carriage and Excellent Weather to help you later on, Renewed Vigors, Consecrated Ground, Forewarned, all of these really important cards that you'll need later in the game, you can also obtain during the first week of supplying. So, and that first week of supplying really dictates sort of the strategy that the hunters can employ, because they know what they've got in their hand. If they're sitting there with an array of really strong cards, then they know that they're in a really strong position. If they don't have so much, then they might have to take their chances, to catch Dracula really well, or they'll have to maybe sit back with some hunters and keep supplying. If they've, got a lack of movement, then they know that's something that's going to be a weakness, and they'll have to try and not let that be exploited and so on. So, there's a lot of things going on, which I won't get into here because that's a topic for another day. But we're only talking about the events that will help you find Dracula. So the first one, probably the most important, is newspaper reports. Its value is definitely not as strong after the first week, but this is the card that all Hunter players desire in week one. And especially if you watch tournament gameplay where there is commentary from a neutral perspective, not much happens in the first week, right? Until Dracula is revealed in some way. Commentators haven't got very much to talk about, to be honest. And a lot of the time, the speculation will be, where Dracula started, but also when are the newspapers going to trigger? Because depending on when they get drawn, the hunter might be able to play them immediately to reveal the third space of the trail, or wait until Dawn and Dusk to reveal the fifth space or sixth space of the trail. So that is very much a case once the newspapers reveal themselves, and depending on when the timing of that happens, then a lot of the game is then dictated upon that, and then there's a lot more to talk about. As a hunter player, this is the card, even though of course I want to have the Consecrated Ground and Renewed Vigors and things, this is the card that I'm definitely wanting to see week one. As soon as I see it, my anxiety levels drop a little bit. Go, okay, we got the newspaper, so we know that we're guaranteed to find him when the first space with the encounter goes into the fifth space of the trail. So that's also another thing that's really important. The way that Dracula normally, not always, but normally plays in our meta is that they will misdirect their starting location because there's no encounter. So then the newspaper reports will be used to trigger or to reveal the first space on the trail after the misdirect, so it has an encounter card. So that will normally take place on Saturday during the dawn phase. So that's basically the timing that most hunters think about. That they'll get the newspaper at some point during the week. If they can use it immediately, great. If they don't, then they'll hold it, and then as soon as it hits Saturday dawn phase, they'll reveal the fifth space of the trail, and then they've basically got 2 days to try to get to that space and stop it from maturing and so on. So in most cases, because of the way that the hunters try to exploit movement and their initial positioning, if you get newspaper reports and is able to reveal that space during the dawn phase of Saturday, in most cases, the hunters will be able to stop that initial encounter from maturing. There will be exceptions to that rule. It's actually funny, in the most recent tournament final, I had a case like that where I was able to get the newspaper reports and I revealed the fifth space of the trail, but just because of other factors and lack of other event cards and stuff, I couldn't actually get to that location. So sometimes it can work out that way. But in most cases, you'll be able to stop that first encounter from maturing. So that's pretty important, right? Especially if Dracula's going to start throwing down, a rumored vampire or something in the first space. So this is definitely the card that everybody wants. So I guess the question is, why on earth are we sitting and trying to wait for this one particular event card? How reliable is it? So what we can do a little bit of analysis, a little bit of data. So this is a thing, if I got this right, a hypogeometric calculation. Yeah, I'll play this GIF. Just get it out of our system. Yes, I know. But basically, what this calculation does, it's a way of calculating probability. So what I've got in this calculation is I'm saying that the population size is 75. So that is the entire event deck. The number of successes in the population are the 3 newspaper reports, because there are 3 copies of the card. The sample size is 20. This number of 20 is if the 4 hunter characters supply only during the day phase, during the first week on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. that would be 20 total supplies. Obviously, if they start night supplying, then that number will be higher. If there's a mystic research involved, that number will be higher. But let's assume that that doesn't happen, and you have 20 standard day supplies. So the Huns aren't moving between Monday and Friday. And we're just trying to calculate what would be the probability that would get one newspaper report. And basically, if I get rid of the GIF, I'll show you the values. So the most important one is to look at the very bottom value, the cumulative probability if the number of newspaper reports is 1 or more than 1. You see it's 0.61. So that just basically means it's 61%. So 20 day supplies for events gives you more than 60% chance of drawing newspaper reports, which will allow you to reveal it, or utilize it during the dawn phase of Saturday. So that's really important. So in the majority of games, in 6 out of 10 games, newspaper reports alone will reveal Dracula's Trail and the first encounter for you, because that's also really important, right? Again, I've talked about this in other videos. I won't go into a huge amount of detail here, but the important thing is, as hunters, at the beginning of the game, kind of ignore that Dracula exists. Think of it as a game where you have to go through lots of different levels before fighting the boss. That's kind of how this game works, right? You have to go and fight your way through the encounters first to stop the maturing, and then you can focus on the big man. Okay, so that's how that works. So that's really important. So yeah, in 6 out of 10 games, newspaper reports will trigger so that Saturday dawn phase, the first space of the trail, or the first maturing space, I should say, of the trail will be revealed. So that's good. That's in the majority. I did originally think maybe I've been spouting some misinformation about this in commentaries and stuff, or maybe been overly surprised when newspaper doesn't reveal itself. I always thought this number was higher, but I think the reason why is because I got a higher value of around 75 or 76%, something like that, from a video that Quincy Morris made. But he was not just only thinking about newspaper reports, he was also incorporating 2 other event cards, which I'm ignoring in this calculation. So I think once you add in those 2 extra cards, then it starts pushing towards 75, 80%. Okay, but newspaper reports alone, 60% chance. Okay, now I'm going to do something that a lot of the YouTubers do nowadays is, stick around until the end of the video because I'm going to tell you something really interesting, right? Basically what we're going to do at the end of the video, we're going to look at some statistics from the most recent tournament and we'll see if this 60% figure holds true. So stick around, we'll find out. So keep that 60% in your head, and we'll come back to it later. So anyway, newspaper reports. That's the most... The other thing about newspaper reports, let me quickly go back to the card and just sort of... And the GIF. The really important thing with newspaper reports as well that I want to explain, not just the fact it's reliable, in the majority of games you'll be able to draw it and use it, but newspaper reports, pardon the swear, but it doesn't give a shit about Dracula's strategy, right? Dracula players are going to be unpredictable. They'll start in strange places. They'll try to manipulate, previous games against you. As a meme, right? Pizza Wizard always starts in Amsterdam and all this sort of thing, and then he might mix it up, in a later game or something, right? Or there's a lot of Dracula players now who do some really sneaky stuff where they'll place their initial counter and then play, a wolf form or something. Or they'll do something wacky and start really close to a hunter and try to get them into a bad situation and kill them and stuff. Newspaper reports doesn't care about all that. Newspaper reports will just reveal the first space. So it doesn't matter if Dracula's in an extremity, is close to the hunters, is trying to do some sneaky stuff. Newspaper reports just gets through all of that and will reveal the space. So that's really important. Because some of the other cards, which I'm going to show later, are more dependent on you trying to, maybe as a hunter player, trying to understand what your Dracula opponent is doing. Newspaper reports doesn't care, it reveals the space. Doesn't matter where Dracula is on the board or what Dracula's trying to do or what his grand plan is. So that is really cool. It is extremely reliable in that sense. So that's the last thing I want to say about newspaper reports. So let me skip back through again. There's the GIF. We'll see it again later. So the next card is Hired Scouts. So this is one of the cards I was mentioning, how you need to be good at reading your opponent or knowing what your opponent might do in order to make this card work. So basically, there are 4 copies of this card. So it's the most common card in the deck. And you play it immediately, and you choose 2 cities, and then if they're on the trail, great. If they're not, then you know they're not. Also, layers would count as well, so you can, if you don't know if it's a layer location or something. But anyway, um, getting hide scouts early in the first week is not as good. Well, it can be good for certain things. It can be good because you can rule out certain extremity locations. Based upon your hunter starting positions and through experience, you will learn that there are certain areas of the map which you're more vulnerable to because of where you start your hunters. So you might just use your hide scouts to rule out those locations. So you just know, right, Dracula's definitely not there, or if he is, you can get a little bit of a head start and try and get there sooner. But often in the first week, it's really difficult to make these hide scouts work unless you get a little bit lucky, or if Dracula goes through a particularly what we call high traffic location. Something, if Dracula starts in the east, normally he's going to have to move through Bucharest or Sofia, right? Or Valona even, right? If it's an Athens start. So those are quite likely places he might go. If he's in the center of the map, maybe somewhere like Strasbourg, for example, because Strasbourg can go in lots of different directions, right? But sometimes it can be really difficult to find, and sometimes you can draw the high scouts when there's maybe only 1 or 2 spaces on the trail, and it's like needle and haystack situation. So, in the first week, it's not so good. Maybe once you've got the newspaper reports, you suddenly get a hide scouts, great. Then you've got a general sense of direction. You can ping things and rule things out. Where hide scouts become very useful is in the mid game. If Dracula is trying to get away from the hunters initially and then does a wolf form, you suddenly draw hide scouts. Great, you can rule out the most problematic locations. If Dracula goes to sea and then suddenly lands, and you've got maybe an idea of what region it is, get hide scouts. Boom, check a couple of cities and see if he's there. Something that I do is become a little bit of a meme. Is if I am preparing to maybe jump on Dracula and I've got a renewed vigor and speedy telegraph combo, well, the hunter who is most far away from the action can just do a supply first with a speedy telegraph. And the number of times I draw hide scouts, and it actually allows me to narrow down Dracula's location even more. So I'm able to use renewed vigor even more efficiently to jump onto Dracula's space rather than having to check locations with renewed vigor. It almost becomes a bit of a joke now how often it happens. But then there are loads of other times too where I draw hide scouts when Dracula's at sea and then they're useless, right? So that's the only problem. Because they are play immediately cards, you can't control them in the same way some of the others. But in the mid game, they can be exceedingly powerful, or if you've got a very good read on where your opponent is likely to start based upon the way that you set up your hunters or from previous experience, and so on. Right. The next two, I've kind of grouped them together because even though they are different, they act in similar ways, and also their general effectiveness is very similar. I've got Evil Presence and Local Rumors. Out of a lot of the cards, these are probably the 2 weakest ones. Just because, again, you can't control them, and also not control them in the sense you don't know when you just draw them from the deck, and that's it. You can't hold them until they're at the right moment. And also, it's not like hide scouts where, as the hunter player, you can direct the scouts to the cities you want. This is just depending on hunter position, and sometimes that is great, and sometimes it's awful. So that's the deal with this. So a little bit different. Evil Presence works on all hunters. It doesn't matter who draws it. The effect applies to all the hunters, but it only tells you if Dracula is currently adjacent to that hunter. So in other words, in an adjoining city space or in an adjacent sea space, because it works on sea spaces, which is really cool. If a hunter is in the same city as Dracula, that doesn't count as adjacent, which is kind of interesting. But anyway. Is he adjacent? No, he is literally right next to me. So yeah, that's how Evil Presence work. Local Rumors is different because it only works on the hunter who draws it, but it doesn't care about time. It will reveal. It doesn't just tell you that he was next to that hunt, it actually reveals the city spaces on the trail. We had a game recently where I think it was somebody in Paris drew it, and it ended up revealing Clermont-Ferrand and Strasbourg and Geneva, and it was just so much fun to see all the cards flipping over. But that happens very rarely. That's the thing, because you can't control when they're drawn. Um, Again, it's a little bit of a meme that when Dracula goes to sea, I'll normally load hunters onto port cities in the hope of drawing an evil presence or local rumors, so it will reveal Dracula's in a certain sea space without the need of money trail, which I'll talk about later. But again, as often as that happens, there are maybe just as many other times, or even more, that evil presence is drawn in the first week and it doesn't tell you a huge amount, or local rumors, it doesn't tell you a huge amount, or the number of times I've had local rumors on somebody and then literally a turn later the same hunter draws local rumors and it doesn't tell you anything new. There are some cool things with, especially with evil presence, because if Dracula tries to start in Britannica and you've got Van Helsing in London or somewhere else there, well, evil presence can kind of rule out a lot of the UK or Britannica. So that can help. A thing that Mr. Green used to do, one of the players from our community used to do, and I've started doing it too because it's kind of cool. Seward starts in Madrid, so he's in the center of Iberia, so he's got coverage. If he draws local rumors or evil presence, he has coverage of all of the other cities in Iberia except Barcelona. So if you suddenly realize that Seward draws one of those cards and it's negative, then Seward could rail up to Bordeaux, up to Paris. So even though you're moving during the first week, which I don't recommend, Seward's then closer to the action. So he might be able to actually jump onto an encounter in the center of the map they wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So there are some cool things you can do with evil presence early, but again, as I said, because it depends on when it's drawn, you don't have much control, and that's the issue. But when it works, it's really it can be extremely impactful, and that's why I'm saying it's the most fun card, because there's a lot of times it fails. By the time it works, oh, it's very satisfying. All of the cards I've spoken about, so newspaper reports, hired scouts, evil presence, and local rumors, they can all be cancelled by Sensationalist Press, which is a Dracula event card. And I think there's only one copy of this card in the deck. So this is Dracula's basically only counter, right, to all of these cards, right? If the hunters draw hired scouts at the right time on newspaper reports or whatever, Dracula can't do anything about it unless he has Sensationalist Press. But you never see this card being played for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because of our meta, we don't really Night Supply, and therefore Dracula doesn't get event cards very much. And also, if Dracula does get this event card, it will be from a hoax mature, probably, and then hoax matures occur after the first week. So if we're talking about only trying to find Dracula's trail in the first week, then Sensationalist Press is almost irrelevant. It could be relevant later on in the game if somehow Dracula's obtained this card, and then Dracula Wolf forms, and suddenly, boom, here comes a hired scouts. You could block that with Sensationalist Press. But the thing is, when hoaxes mature, Dracula doesn't normally pick Sensationalist Press because there are cards which are just deemed more superior. This doesn't help Dracula win the game, right? You're more likely to pick something like an Earthly Swiftness or Darkness Returns, which accelerates Dracula's victory, if it's going to happen, or maybe help Dracula get out of a tricky situation. And or maybe a card like Devilish Power to help counteract Consecrated Ground, or what other things? Emmanuel Hildesheim, maybe to try and obtain more cards, or mess with the event deck, or I'm trying to think of other cards which Dracula would probably prefer. Maybe something for combat, like a Nocturnal Visit or Enrage. There are just so many cards that Dracula would favor compared to this. Cancelling newspaper would be very powerful, but the thing is, the newspaper is more critical in the first week, when Dracula wouldn't have obtained Sensationalist Press anyway. So yeah, that's just something to bear in mind. The other thing is, and this is something that Roscoe has always sort of said in commentary and videos to me, and it's very true. As Dracula, you have to work under the assumption that you're going to be found. So having a card that cancels the fact that you're going to get found is probably not the best, because you might just suddenly get found on the next turn anyway, right? You cancel newspaper reports and suddenly hired scouts pop up or something. So as Dracula, you always have to plan around the fact you're going to get found, especially in the first week. Later in the game, you might be able to give the hunters the slip once they get, they overcommit to a certain area or whatever, but Dracula players have to play with the mentality of, in the first week, I'm going to be found. If you're not found in the first week, great. Then you can take advantage of that fact. But just make the assumption you're going to be found in the first week, and then see how the game plays on from there. So yeah, even if Cetaceous Press exists, Dracula players, don't hold your breath that you're going to get this card. If you just magically and randomly obtain this card and you can use it to cancel newspaper reports, which can be quite critical, yeah, go on, use it. It's fine. But just don't assume that you're going to get it. And then from Hunter players, don't think about Sensationalist Press. Almost pretend it doesn't exist in the deck, to be honest. It's just there as a filler card. If you're able to find Dracula using the cards I've spoken about, Dracula can't do anything about it. Another thing that Dracula cannot do anything about is Jonathan Harker and the other allies. I've got a video in the works which is going to be talking about the allies in more detail, so I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail here. But obviously the three allies, so Jonathan Harker, Sister Agatha, and Rufus Smith, all have a search ability, so it's kind of like a mini hide scouts. But then if you've got that ally in the discard pile and then you combine it with a surprising return, it's like a mini hide scouts but on demand, which can be more powerful than a hide scouts if you time it right. So that can be strong, but that normally is a thing that will be more important in the late game, mid game and late game. Normally you see surprising returns when Dracula goes to sea and then pops up, on the other side of the map, and the hunters want to quickly check certain key locations before they move, so they'll do it during the dawn phase. Then yes, that's when you often see it being played. You don't know surprising returns being played very early. Sometimes you draw an ally and you already got surprising return sort of in your back pocket. You may just throw out the search ability early and see. But again, it's like hide scouts. You might hit Dracula's trail or Dracula's current location, or you'll just completely miss. So it's a bit of a needle in a haystack situation. Jonathan Harker has his ally effect, which benefits the whole finding Dracula thing. We got the bit of the joke in the community that Jonathan Harker is slowpoke, because he doesn't reveal the hideout until it's on the 6th space of the trail. And in some situations, depending on where Dracula has started, especially we're talking about the first week, even if the hunters discover that is his starting location, they might not be able to reach it in time. So compared to newspaper, it's more likely that encounter will mature, unless they've got express movement cards or renewed vigor, or Dracula started very close to a hunter. However, the thing that Harker is very good at is then discovering the trail thereafter. Newspaper reports only tells you that first space, or whatever space you choose it to reveal. But Jonathan Harker just keeps working for you in the background, revealing every space once it slides to the 6th space of the trail. So it's great for the hunters, right? You're reducing the amount of deduction that you have to do, especially if Dracula decides to do a cheeky wolf form or something, right? Harker is a great sort of counter to that. Or if Dracula started in the center of the map, and his first location was Strasbourg. Oh, well, great. We found Strasbourg, and we stopped that from maturing, but now we've got, is it like 7 locations adjacent to it? Oh, now he's wolf formed. Oh, there's even more locations adjacent, but we're having to look at. Jonathan Harker just reveals that deduction and just shows you. And that's great. So then the hunters can focus more on supplying and then moving efficiently to the space they need to move to, and not having to think about just randomly checking locations. So even though he is slow, and again, I'll talk about it in the other video, but the weakest of the 3 allies, he helps you to find Dracula. And also thematically, he's a very cool card in terms of, thinking about, the book and everything. So technically, the board game is a sequel to the book. So yeah, thumbs up to Jonathan Harker. Not a bad card at all. If you got it, I often will, if I draw Jonathan Harker in the first week and I haven't yet obtained newspaper reports, I'll just ally Jonathan Harker. If I have got newspaper reports in my hand and then Jonathan Harker appears, that's a little bit of a trickier decision. If I've already drawn a different ally, then I won't. I'll search Jonathan Harker and then try and get surprising returns to bring him back later to search. But if you don't have another ally, it might be worth allying him, because then you can use him for the use the newspaper reports, and then you got Jonathan Harker in the bank for later. It just depends. Also depends on where you think Dracula started and stuff. So there you go. There's Jonathan Harker. Moving on from Jonathan Harker to Mina Harker, we've got the Hypnosis event card, and then also Mina's Psychic Scan ability in general. Let's talk about the Psychic Scan ability first. the Psychic Scan ability in our meta in the first week is not very critical because obviously the hunters don't move very much. There are some hunter players who might try to do some sneaky stuff and move between different regions and scan, which can definitely work in terms of finding out if Dracula's in that region. But at least I'll speak for myself. I normally just keep Mina with another hunter, normally in Vienna. So I will occasionally scan Austro-Hungary because some Draculas can be a little bit sneaky and try to be greedy and get a couple of moves in Austro-Hungary, then sneak back into Baltica if they're starting east. So sometimes they can work. But in general, Psychic Scan during the first week is not very critical. Thereafter, Psychic Scan is an extremely powerful tool, and something I'll say it personally for me, I underutilize. I am not very good at using psychic scans. It's something that Captain Gyro constantly brings up when we do commentaries and stuff about the strength of the psychic scan, and I completely agree. It's a very powerful ability. It can rule out a lot of regions. It can stop Dracula doing some sneaky stuff later on. So psychic scanning is good. So if you can get flexible movement on Mina, get out paired up with another hunter, you can cause a real load of trouble for Dracula if you can rule out regions really effectively. And the fact that you can psychic scan during the day or night then allows you to sort of be flexible with it. Hypnosis is like a OP version of the psychic scan. It's a one-time use. Yes, Mina is delayed, but it just tells you the region. Obviously, she has to be paired up with another hunter, but that's fine. So you normally see this. So I've said on the slide here, it's not recommended for the first week. In my opinion, using hypnosis in the first week is a last case resort. I see a lot of hunters doing it. Again, it's almost like I don't know if it's a slightly anxiety thing. I'm not quite sure what it is, but you see hunter players, they don't get newspaper reports and they start getting twitchy, like, oh my god, there's this rumor token that is sliding towards. I need to stop it. Hypnosis. I understand it. I just don't agree with it. The problem is hypnosis only tells you where Dracula currently is. It doesn't tell you anything about the first space on, or the first space on the trail that's going to mature. So if it's something really obvious, like he started in extremity, like Baltica, okay, you might be able to deduce logically where that first location could be. But once if it says Germania, imagine if you use hypnosis, say Friday or Saturday of week 1, and it says Germania. Does that tell you where the first location is? Not really. Right? It could still be Germania, or it could be France, or it could be Italy. Depending if there's a wolf form mixed in with it. I mean, it could be Barcelona start, right? And Dracula's just gone all the way from Barcelona up through France, through Italy, and in Germania. It doesn't tell you anything. The other reason being is I believe you need to use hypnosis later in the game. Once Dracula's done a really clever wolf form, or has gone to sea, and you haven't got any other ways to find him, hypnosis can really get you out of trouble. And I think using it the first week is a massive waste. If there's anybody here who plays hypnosis in the first week and has a counter argument, by all means put it in the comments below. I am willing to be proven wrong, or I'm not dismissing that in certain situations hypnosis first week can be good, but in my opinion, it's not worth it. If I've got hypnosis in hand and I'm seeing that I'm not drawing the newspaper reports, I might actually just say, okay, I will let that first 1 or 2 spaces on the trail mature. If that means I have to give up 7 points, okay. I just have to have more confidence in myself that I can catch Dracula in week 2 and week 3. And the hypnosis is a big part of that plan. I'd rather do that than use hypnosis, and then I still can't stop the first few things on the trail maturing, because then you're giving up mature effects to Dracula, and you've used your hypnosis. And the number of times I've seen it where hunters use hypnosis in the first week, and then Dracula instantly wolf forms. So that information that you gained is almost lost instantly, depending on where they've wolf formed from, but more or less it's lost. So if you're a budding hunter player, don't use hypnosis in the first week. Hold it. Even if it goes against your instincts, just hold it, and I bet you'll be able to use it to greater effect later in the game. Again, if you disagree with me, or if you think there's another reason why hypnosis could be really powerful in the first week, leave a comment below, and I'll be very happy to check it out. The other really sort of powerful, one of the most powerful event cards alongside hypnosis is Money Trail. So Money Trail is the only sea exclusive Find Dracula card. Obviously, I talked about before that Evil Presence and Local Rumors work on sea spaces. But Money Trail is the only one that can target only a sea space, which I think is really cool. Normally, good arming has it because you want good arming to use it first, and then the rest of the hunts can act unless you've got Speed Telegraph. And this really influences how Dracula plays, right? Dracula will often take a lot of safe sea movements and not try and do something sneaky where there's then a risk of their Money Trail getting followed up by Consecrated Ground or something and blocking him in and whatever. But sometimes Dracula has to take risks. So yeah, it's a really good card. Obviously, you're never going to use it in the first week. Even if you see Dracula do a couple of movements and then go to sea, you might be able to try and work out where it is. I wouldn't use Money Trail early. Same as Hypnosis. I fear if you use a card like this early, you're going to need it later and then you don't have it. So just hold it and be prepared to use it at the right moment. The question of when exactly you should use it, if Dracula's at sea, depends on where Dracula's left from and how much time is left in the game and so on. If you've got a little bit more time, I recommend, or if there's a lot of different sea locations that Dracula. So, for example, if Dracula leaves from Iberia into the South Atlantic and Dracula moves 3 sea spaces in total, well, Dracula could be in Irish Sea or North Sea or English Channel or Tyrrhenian. Once he's gone that 3rd sea space, that is the time to trigger Money Trail. Because even if Dracula does move a 4th sea space, well, you know which direction he's going, right? So it's not going to be a big deal. If you play Money Trail too early, you might maybe get a sense of what direction he goes in, but then you don't know where he goes thereafter. Like if he leaves from South Atlantic and you play Money Trail on the 2nd sea space, okay, great. If it's Mediterranean, great, because you know he's going in that direction. If it's North Atlantic, now you got a problem. Dracula can move to either North Sea or English Channel or Irish Sea, and you don't know which one. And Dracula might, depending on where the hunter positions are and so on, Dracula might be able to move around and sort of evade you. It depends. It depends. It's not a simple clear-cut case. Sometimes I play Money Trail once Dracula has landed. Sometimes I do it based upon the number of sea moves while Dracula's still at sea. It just depends. Through experience, you will learn the best time to play the card, and it'll be more, especially in commentary. If I can see a specific situation, then I'll be able to explain when Money Trail should be played. But just right now, without showing you a specific example, it's very much a case of, I think play this card later rather than earlier is better, but there are certain situations where playing it earlier gives you more of an advantage because then it gives the hunters time to move and reposition and stuff. Lots of things. But Money Trail, not a first week card, but extremely powerful, and a lot of the times Dracula will go to sea. Money Trail can bail you out, and it's really good. You can also play it during day or night phase, so it's perfect. And then moving on now to a couple, not well, this card's not a jokey card. I don't want to say it like the way this does have serious application. It's just not a card that I would necessarily rank as highly, but it has some uses. It's Wax Cylinders. It's a card that is unique to John Seward, so only he can use it. The deduction part of the card we don't care about right now because that only involves encounter cards. The analysis part is really cool. It basically, when you use analysis, Dracula has to tell you if Hyde is on the trail or not. If Hyde is on the trail, not only is the Hyde space revealed, so you see where on the trail it is, but also the city associated with it is also revealed. So you can do some quite cool things with that, especially later on in the game. If you think Dracula's hidden, well, you can suddenly reveal him when he's not expecting you to. But in the first week as well, it's definitely got its uses. This one is quite unique depending on what type of Dracula player you are. When I first started in the community, almost 3 years ago now, 3 years ago at this point, the meta was a thing called the hide trick. So if you're a new player, you might not know what that means. The hide trick is just simply using hide alongside your first encounter. So you put down as your first encounter, say, a vampire with a rumor token. You then play a hide after it, and the hide has a guardian, as that's what we call it. So the guardian would normally be a saboteur. That was the old meta, was use a saboteur. So when a hunter steps onto the space, you don't ambush with a vampire, you just ambush with a saboteur, so they're delayed. If you catch it at the right time, when the vampire's on the last space of the trail, the hunter will be delayed, and they will not be able to stake the vampire before it matures. Now, as hunters have become more efficient at moving, or maybe even sending 2 hunters to try and deal with it, now other things are used on the hide space, like bats, or even fog. I've seen being used, because fog can trap hunters for longer, depending if it's on a port city and stuff. So, the hide trick is a thing that is, I wouldn't say high trick is meta. I actually don't know if it's meta. I mean, trying to think from my own experience in playing in the most recent tournament, I'd probably say that I used the high trick in the minority of my Dracula games, but I could be wrong. I can't think off the top of my head. People from the community, if you use the high trick a lot, feel free to leave a comment below. Or if you didn't use the high trick a lot, if you remember not using the high trick a lot, leave a comment below. It'd be interesting to see sort of the spread. But there are quite a lot of games where Dracula players will use the high trick to try to ensure or increase the probability that their first encounter matures, and if that is the case, then this can get countered by wax cylinders. That if you can get wax cylinders onto Jonathan Seward, or John Seward rather, really early, then you might be able to reveal hide when Dracula's not expecting it. The problem is this creates a little bit of a cumbersome setup. If Seward doesn't draw it, then it's going to require event trades at night. And at least for me, in the beginning of the game, event trades are not really the thing I'm prioritizing. I am trying to get my horse economy set up. Again, now we're talking about fast horses, which is a completely different thing. So it can be, if I suddenly draw wax cylinders on Mina, unless there are trades that I want to make, or I've already got my horse economy fixed, it's going to take quite a while to get it over to John Seward, at least 2 days, because you don't want to be doing event trades during the day. So it might not be worth it. By the time you get wax cylinders onto Seward, well, newspaper reports is then going to be valid. Obviously, if you don't have newspaper reports, you may as well just use wax cylinders and see if it works. But often it can be quite slow to use it in the first week. So just be aware, it's not the most reliable thing. But the cool thing is, with analysis, you reveal if hide is on the trail or not, and then the wax cylinders goes back into John Seward's hand. So you can just keep using it over and over to almost prevent Dracula from hiding, which is really cool. Or there's something, if he does hide, you can reveal it. So it's really neat. Sometimes Draculas forget that John Stewart's got it. So that's wax cylinders. And then the last card I want to talk about, it's a little bit of the trolley one from the meme, but it's not wrong. Consecrated Ground, as good as it is for lots of other things, it actually reveals the locations and also the encounters associated with that location. So you can actually use it as a glorified searching tool. I don't recommend doing that. If you draw Consecrated Ground really early and you can't find Dracula from newspaper reports, I am not saying use Consecrated Ground. I am not saying that. But what you can do is, if you've got Consecrated Ground and you think you've got a pretty good idea, you've narrowed Dracula's location to maybe 1 or 2 cities, but you're not exactly sure where he is, and you don't magically draw hide scouts to find out, you can use Consecrated Ground and then the Heavenly Host tokens in such a way that you can actually search those locations that he could be in, and depending on how then his trailer is revealed, you can deduce where he currently is or whatever, and then you can box him in a really, effective way. So there is a little bit of a searching aspect with Consecrated Ground, but I am not saying you use it as a substitute for newspaper reports. I'm not saying that. But it does have a search function associated with it. The problem is when you read the card, it doesn't say anything about it. Like a lot of things with this game, you have to go into the rules reference to find out. But the problem is the rules reference doesn't tell you anything about the reveal of locations and encounters. That's in the Learn to Play booklet if you got the physical board game. So I know the rules are crazy for Fury of Dracula. You got information in different places, but if you go to the Learn to Play, you will find the whole thing about revealing locations and encounters. So technically, Consecrated Ground does help you find Dracula, but not maybe recommended that you use it in the first week. That would be pretty cool. If someone can find Dracula with Consecrated Ground in the first week, you get bonus points. So that's all I think, unless I've forgotten any, those are all the cards that help you find Dracula. Now let's look at some data from the most recent tournament, and yeah, we'll play the GIF again. There we go, done it. Right, here's the graph. So basically, in the tournaments that we've been running over the last, well, not the first tournament, but it was maybe the last year or so, we have been asking the players after the game when they fill in their post-match report with statistics about the influence and health value of Dracula and stuff that we need in order to calculate the league table and stuff, we've added in some additional questions for them to answer. They're not compulsory. It's just if they can remember the information. And normally, the information's been pretty consistent between the players, so we can use it. One of the questions we've asked is, how was Dracula, as in his current location or his trail, revealed first during the game? Because we're just interested to see, how hunters reveal Dracula's trail. So this is the data from all 173 games from the most recent League of Dracula. I haven't really fully gone through the data, so there might be a little bit of, inconsistencies and things between players. But the fact that I added up all the all the different values for the different ways that the hunters can find Dracula, and it reached 173, which is the number of games. That's looking promising, so we're going to go with this. So there might be a couple of percentages might change here and there, but once we analyze it more carefully, but this is the general figure. So you can see that the biggest slice of the pie, by quite a long way, is for newspaper reports, with 57%. So remember that the magic number that we were talking about earlier was 60%. So it's a little bit lower, a tiny bit lower than that 61%. However, remember, this question is a little bit different. This question is not, did the hunters get newspaper reports? Is, did they use newspaper reports to reveal Dracula's trail or current location first? So it's very possible that the hunters reveal Dracula by one of the other means that we can see on this pie chart, but then later on, newspaper reports was also obtained during the first week, right? So I don't know what that value would be because we haven't asked that, because there's only a certain amount of information that the players can remember, and rightly so, because they're trying to play this game and not think about statistics and stuff. But the fact that the number is pretty close to the predicted 61%, that's looking really promising. So that's good. But I think it's kind of cool now that we now know that the number is basically 60%, 6 and 10. So there could be 4 games out of every 10 where Dracula's potentially not going to get revealed with newspaper reports. So this is when the other things come into play. So you can see Hired Scouts is the next biggest slice, 13%. It can be really tricky to try and find Dracula with Hired Scouts. Sometimes you don't draw them early, right, even though there are 4 of them in the deck. But 30%, pretty healthy number. The rest I've kind of grouped up by color. So we've got the Psychic Scan and then Hypnosis. They're in blue. Psychic Scans, very low, understandable, because unless Dracula starts in Austria-Hungaria or wherever Mina is, that's never going to work, unless hunters move around, but normally they don't. Hypnosis, a little bit higher, kind of what I talked about before. Some hunters might get a little bit twitchy and play Hypnosis. That's my opinion anyway. They'll play Hypnosis, that's why you got that figure. You've then got Local Rumors and Evil Presence together. It doesn't surprise me that Evil Presence is a little bit higher than Local Rumors. 1% would be 2 games, more or less. I should have done it where it's not exactly 1%, but it's close enough. I'm not surprised that Evil Presence is more, just because of the fact that it spits out across all hunters, rather than just the one who draws the card. So you got more of a chance of catching Dracula. That would also depend on the different. In this latest tournament, there was a lot more variety on hunter starting positions. So that's also why you maybe get a little bit more coverage of Evil Presence. Jonathan Harker, I talked about, is really effective, and it works. Again, Dracula can't counter Jonathan Harker. He can counter newspaper reports with Sensationalist Press, not that he draws Sensationalist Press normally. But Jonathan Harker can't be avoided. So it's there. The ally search is lower than Hired Scout. Makes sense, because players will be using allies for the ally effect, and also because you're only searching 1 space, not 2, so it's more likely that Hired Scouts would hit, not the ally. Wax Cylinders, all the Wax Cylinders fan club will be happy. We had 5% of the games. We had a hide card and then the associated location with it revealed with Wax Cylinders. And then the next 3 are the only games where Dracula was not revealed by an event or Mina's Psychic Scan. So it's not many. So looking at 2%, 2%, 5% of the games, that's what, like 7 or 8, I think? Let me write this down. I've got it written here. 6. Oh, but I've got Hunter Movement. Okay, right, yeah. So 8 games, more or less, out of 173, had it that Dracula was not revealed by an event or an ally ability in the first week. We had 2% of the games, so about 2 or 3 games in total, was that the hunter just moved into the space. And then a total of 3% of the games, well, 4% of the games were between the trail not being revealed at all, or that the first encounter fell off the trail, and that the mature effect associated with that encounter, so that would be a vampire or wolves or Sagani mob or a natural fog, meant that the city associated with it was revealed. So that's not many. Very, 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 very few. Very few. So even if newspaper reports that 60%-ish, 6 out of 10, more or less figure, if you fall into the remaining 4 out of 10, you've still got hired scouts, you've still got Jonathan Harker, you've still got wax cylinders, you've got these other ways of finding Dracula. Okay, it's very, you can see it's incredibly rare that Dracula's trail is unrevealed at all during the first week, or Dracula's able to mature something that then reveals the trail for the first time to you. So think of this graph when you're playing as the hunters. Use this to gain confidence in the idea of just sitting still and supplying. The events will help you. Okay? And I hope this graph is proof of that. And also, even if you don't draw the newspaper reports or the hired scouts or Jonathan Harker or whatever you need, you're still supplying. So you're going to be obtaining renewed vigors and consecrated ground and forewarns and charted carriages and sense of emergencies and planned ambushes, all the other things that you'll need during the game, because it's not just finding Dracula, right? You need to deal with the encounters, you need the movement to get onto Dracula's space, and then you need to kill Dracula. Okay, so those are the key aspects of the game. Is not just find. It's not something like Scotland Yard, where it's only you find the space where the baddie is in, and you win the game. No, there's so much more to this game. You need to find him, get onto his space, and then kill him. So it's all the bundle of events together that help you. It's all part of this package. But the cool thing with this game is, depending on how the events and the order that the events get drawn, really influences how the game is played. Sometimes you reveal Dracula really early with a hired scouts or a newspaper reports, but then the hunters maybe have drawn a lot of Dracula events, and they are just really lacking in event cards they can use thereafter. Or other times, the hunters are stocked full of all the most powerful events in the game, but they haven't got a clue where Dracula is, at least in the first week. If it's later on, they can use a hypnosis or something to try and find him. So yeah, it just makes the game extremely interesting when you got this array of cards, and it's not just the varied strength and ability of them, but just the order in which they come out really influences the game. But this is the data. I'm really excited that we could bring this to you, because I was making this video, and I didn't even think about including the data, and I suddenly thought, once I saw the value of 60% for newspaper reports, oh, I wonder if in the tournament that actually panned out that way, and it did, more or less. I'm really happy. End off the video on a good note. But yeah, it's really cool where we can bring this sort of data to you and show you, the value of certain cards and how the sort of sit still and supply meta, the dig, don't dash sort of meta, and trying to find those newspaper reports really does pay off. So hopefully that's given all of you budding hunter players out there food for thought and things you can take into your next game, and hopefully you'll catch Dracula. And for everybody else who is watching, who is more experienced and about the meta, hopefully this was still interesting, and hopefully you like seeing the data. So there you go. That's me for today. I've rambled on for long enough, but thank you very much everybody for watching. There'll be more strategy guides and things coming in the near future. Check it out every single Friday, hopefully, unless something happens to me. We'll have a new Fury of Dracula video. Also, I just want to quickly plug, I am streaming on Twitch, and every second Wednesday we've got guaranteed Fury of Dracula night. There's a link to my Twitch in the description. And in these live streams, I'm going to be doing some wacky challenges to basically, not that I need not that my opponents need help or anything, because they're all good enough and they can all beat me on their own merits, but just because so that you guys in the chat can see me suffer. I've got some wacky challenges I'm going to impose on myself and see what chaos and carnage ensues. So if that sounds fun, come and check it out. Link in the description. And also, if you are watching this and you're not familiar with the digital edition of the game, or you have the digital edition of the game but you can't find players to play with, there's a link in the description below to the Nomad Games Discord community. This is where we find players to play friendly games with. We talk to the developers of the game, talk about strategy, all that good stuff. And if you're really, really committed and you want to be involved with, participating in our tournaments, just send me a private message on Discord and I'll send you a link to the dedicated Discord server that we have. And that's it for now, folks. So take care. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this. Feel free to leave all your comments below. I'm really looking forward to it. And I'll see you next week, next Friday, for another video. Bye-bye.